Okay, there's the dovetail blade. This will be the insert that gets put in here. And then I'm going to change the blade from my thin kerf blade to the dovetail blade that's tilted over at 7 degrees. So I have to take this out and take out that insert and put in this insert, and I have to change the saw blade out. Over. So I'm going to get my bevel gauge, and I got a number of ways of getting that set to 7 degrees, but my favorite way is to take this this block of plywood right here. It's already set for 7 degrees. You can see here, and I will move this out of the way. So I can just take this and put the bevel blade on there, push it over until it's flat against this 7 degree surface and flat against this bottom right here. And I need to make sure it's also flat, that this tongue is all the way out. And then I can start to tighten it up a little bit. And then readjust it. There's still enough ability to readjust, and I think that's enough now. I'll test it one more time to make sure that it fits perfectly, and I see no light in there anywhere. So this is correct. So now this is going to go right here. The blade's going to come all the way up as high as I can get it. And there is a top dead center on this blade. That's the vertical measurement down to the axle on that. So that'll be the topmost part. And I've got a very faint line on my table saw right here that I can use. And I want the edge of this blade to be flat, and I don't want it to touch the teeth. But this blade's got a flat part on it, and so I want to make sure that this is completely up against that flat part. And then as I tilt the blade over, I'm going to look and see when I'm getting close to 7. That's 6 degrees, 6.5. So yeah, I see a little bit of a gap there. I keep closing until that gap completely I see a little bit of a gap. Right now I can see no light between that edge and the blade itself. So that means my blade is now set to 7 degrees. I'll tighten down that angle, lock it in. It'll be just right. And then I need to put this back in here, but I've got to lower the blade and then raise it back up after I put this insert back in there. So I lower the blade below the zero clearance plate. Then I install the zero clearance plate in the front and then drop it down. I mean, the front being up here, and drop it down in the back. And it's got a little bit of rock in it, but I think we're pretty good on that. So I've ordered some Loctite to keep these adjustment nuts from spinning and vibration. I think they do. That's why it gets loose every now and then. It changes. So the Loctite should take care of that, but it hasn't come in yet. Okay, so now the blade's ready to come up. I'll make sure it comes up through here. Yep, comes up perfectly through that curve. I'm going to drop it back down because now we have to take a measurement of the pin board thickness, because I gotta set the height of that blade perfectly to the thickness of this pin board. All right, so now I can take this, and you see the black line on this zero clearance insert. That's top dead center of the blade. So I'm going to put the pin board. There's the face of the pin board. I'm going to put it up at the top right here, and I'm going to measure the thickness of that pin board, and I'm going to hold this magnet down, turn the magnet on, so this is locked down to that table saw. And if I push, you can see the gauge moving as I push down, and so I am going to be pushing down a little bit. So I'm just going to put, maybe 4 or 5 pounds of, maybe not even that much pressure, just a couple of pounds of pressure on it. And then I'm going to turn this zero to where that matches that blade. So when I put my pressure on it, it sets exactly at 0. So I think I'm going to go with that. So now I've got my gauge set. I'm going to loosen it up and move it over to where it's exactly top dead center. And as I wheel the blade up, I need to move a tooth. All these teeth are ground the same, so I need a tooth to where as it comes up, it'll hit that blade. And since it's coming up at an angle, all right, so it's off. The magnet's off right now, so I'm going to move this over, try to get it right on that tooth. All right, so now it's touching the tooth, because I saw the dial gauge made. I turn it on, so it's locked down, and I'm going to move this tooth back and forth just to make sure that I'm at the top dead center, and it is, because when I moved it back, the dial gauge went down, and when I move it back to where it was originally, it was just right. So, yep, it looks good. Okay, so I'm going to raise this up until I'm on that 0 that I gauge as the thickness of the board. So that should match the thickness of the board when I'm there. This is a very delicate thing. It's hard to move it in just 1/1000th of an inch, but I just did. So that moved it 1/1000th of an inch, and it's dead on 0. Before I do anything, I'm going to tighten it down and lock it so that I can't mess with it. And now we'll take this out of the way, and I can look at this. I need to look on this side because it's tilted over to that side. I mean, that is just perfect. I mean, just perfect. So, and the reason I use the pin board is because I'm cutting spaces in these tails for the pin board to go up into. So, even though these are cut out of the same piece of plywood, there could be a slight variation in thickness. I mean, I've seen it before, so it's I'm just doing this out of habit to do this correctly. So I can't see myself in the picture. Okay, that's better. All right, so that's how you set the depth of a saw blade. I mean, I've used it other ways, tried to just hold the board up against it and feel it with my finger and so forth. I found this the most accurate way. I like using a dial indicator. Makes me feel like an engineer, and we can just go from there. All right, so now the next step is we're ready to cut. Once I get my very accurate miter gauge from Craig Tools on here, I drop it down in there. And this is gonna be a straight cut because the blade is tilted. I don't need to tilt the miter gauge at all. So let me get the the one for that. I've got two backing boards, one to use for the tails, which is this one. So you can see these are cut at an angle. This is a 10-degree angle, this is a 7-degree angle. And so that slides in here, that slides in here, and this slides in here. So 3 bolts on the front. And I'm going to line this up with the actual blade itself, and it'll go back and forth. So I'm going to kind of get right in the middle of it, and use these nuts on here to tighten that backing board down against the miter gauge. Now let me just make sure it slides. Yep, it does. It slides fine. It's on 0. It looks good. And the other thing I'm going to do, sorry about this camera moving again, but I need to get in this drawer. You won't even see that, but I said that anyway. So now this is a little block that fits down into the miter slot, and it allows me to have a backstop so that this, so I get close to this blade but not to the point where it'll cut at this point. So I don't need to come any further back than this on here. And I also need a clamp. And for this purpose, I like to use these, they're like vice grips, but they've got big flats on them. And I clamp down like that, and that does a good job. So I need to open this up to fit this. Right now I'm just setting the clamp width. Alright, so that's a pretty good width right there. Alright, so that's back all the way up against there, so I can cut 2 of the sides from the front. I'll cut this side because it's going to the left, and I'll cut that side and it's going to the left. And I'm going to use the kerf of the throat plate of the zero clearance plate as my gauge to get that lined up right there. And since this is, oh, you know, first mistake, I'm cutting into the good side. So I need to put it so it cuts into the waist side. So that's why you need to mark those things like that, and then double check what you're doing every step through the process. All right, so that's on there, and that's sitting there ready for it to cut. Ready for it to cut on that edge right there. So time to turn all the noise on. So now we're ready to make the cut. I don't think I could have gotten any closer to that line right there. So there's the back line, there's the front line, and it's right on. So I got the saw blade height right. We'll do the next one. It's going into the waist this time. Lined up with the zero clearance edge of the saw kerf. Noise again. Okay, so now I've cut two sides. I need to turn it around and cut the other two sides. And it looks like I was cutting from the back side to begin with, which is just fine. I didn't realize I was doing that. I probably would have cut from the front side had I known it. And now we're cutting from the back side. I see the face mark, in other words. But here we go. I've got it ready to go. For the critical cuts, I always use the clamp when I'm clearing out the waste, and there's no worry about getting it exact, other than making sure you're staying all the way in the waste. I won't use the clamp anymore. I'll just hold it on there. So So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the waste. So the first cut I'm going to make, the first cut I'm going to make is with this edge right up against that saw kerf, not going over. And since the blade is tilted in, that's going to cut off an edge all the way up to the top of the line, and it'll be a good sharp edge. I don't want any fuzz out here. So this will be a full blade coming into contact with that top line right there. And then I'll be able to get this middle piece as best I can. If I can't get it the rest of the way, then I will use a chisel to get it out, which is no big deal. So I'm holding it. Noise. Alright, so you can see that edge I just took off of there. Do the same thing on the other side. So now you can see the dovetails. Pristine, precision cut. Not necessarily in terms of thickness. We're gonna mark this directly against the pins to get that right. But you can see the inside. I've got that saw gauge mark, that knife line, and it's not on the front. I can see a little bit of the pencil mark, but now I can erase them fully, and we can go from there. All right, so we're going back over to the vise over there. I'll move the cameras. I'll turn this off, and we'll start the cameras up again there, and that'll be the most important part of what we're doing. Right now we've done everything. It's pretty easy so far. The next part is critical. It's getting the marking gauge, getting the saw kerf cut, just a tiny little saw kerf, because what I'm going to do, I don't need to look at anything on the bottom of the pins. I need to see something on the front side, and I can't just do it by sight. I need to be able to move the board over and have the edge of the blade touch the side of the cut where the tail goes, and for that pin, and that way it'll be I won't press it hard. I'll just move it over until it just barely touches the mark I've cut in there, and then I'll cut the rest of it with the table saw. So the first part is just to make a mark with a saw kerf where it's on the waist side of the pins, but dead on with where the tail is going to go, the side of the tail. And I'll show you how we do that. The trick in this one is a Rob Cosman trick, where we move the tailboard over a little bit by 1/64 of an inch, the thickness of a saw blade, at least the kind of saw blade that I'm using, and use that to make a mark, and so it'll be good. So we'll see you in just a moment.